So this is the session on making data good, the journey of analytics at Campbell Soup Company. So just to get a pulse on the room, can we have a show of hands for who's in the CPG industry? Good. Okay, so good amount. We have the founder, Joseph Campbell, in the front row here. So what we wanted to do today was, one, tell you about ourselves, also tell you what revenue management is all about, and the journey that we set out upon, and also the analytic culture that we tried to spread with Tableau. And ultimately, what we wanted to provide was some lessons learned that if you were embarking upon your own journey, you could take these lessons and watch-outs and apply them to your work. So I'm Pete Charette. I was a senior analyst in the revenue management group. Went to St. Joe's University, got a couple of master's degrees, and I worked for a Tableau business partner called Waypoint Consulting. So I'm the newbie of the group. I've been with Campbell's for under 2 years, and currently getting my MBA at Temple.
Hi, I'm Paul Danifo. I'm the opposite of newbie in this group. I've been with Campbell's for 17 years. I manage enterprise BI services at Campbell's. I started right out of school, and I had various all BI-related jobs throughout the course of my career, and I've been managing the group for about 2.
And I'm John. I'm the median in between Pete and Paul. So I've been with Campbell's for about 9 years. Been in various sales and marketing related roles, mostly around research, and spent some time actually with IRI prior to joining Campbell, so about 2.5 years. So firmly entrenched in the CPG industry, as we talked about.
Okay. Yeah. Which one is it?
It's that one.
I think it's the right one.
Yeah. See if that works. Okay, so as the old man, I get the obligatory company slide. So, so when we show this, really what we try to get at is that, Campbell's is a pretty recognizable brand, but it's typically a little bit bigger or more expansive than people realize, right? So you see the snapshot of things, and we'll get into a little bit more specifics on it, but we're a Fortune 500 global company with the revenue that you see there and the brands that you see in this picture. So not just a soup company, right? A global food company. So really what we want to drill into, like from a company standpoint, is, a lot of the theme of this presentation is going to be around the partnership among the three of us and how that came about. And really it was born out of a construct at Campbell's called Integrated Global Services. And what this is an umbrella organization over IT and other functions that deliver like common business services, where IT had been doing this for quite a while as an enterprise function. Departments like revenue management and some others were not, right? So it allowed us to standardize other business processes, but also foster more partnerships like this one. And really what this organization is about is delivering services to these sort of 4 entities within our organization, right? So we're organized by 3 primary divisions from a brand perspective. And that's America's Simple Meals and Beverages that you see in the middle, and that's typically what you would think of as Campbell's, right? Soup, Swanson broth, Pace and Prego sauces, V8 beverages, and things like that. Global baking and snacking, which is primarily Pepperidge Farm in the U.S., and then some international snacking businesses that we have. And then Campbell Fresh, which is a more emergent business that was particularly galvanized by an acquisition that we made at Bolthouse Farms, which is a premium juice and carrot business in California, but now incorporates other businesses as well. And then the Campbell's corporate entity, which is the remainder of the corporate functions. Now, what IGS really does here is accepts requests from all these entities, right? So, from whether it's revenue management services or IT services, requests come in from these entities, and then we deliver those services back, right? And the idea is to gain efficiencies through doing those things in a more standard and consistent way. Now, why does this matter at Tableau conference, right? And I think this is the slide that kind of illustrates that, right? So there's a lot of this is like stuff that was the mandate of sort of the IGS organization when we formed it. And you'll see a lot of language in here that's particularly resonant, I think, at a conference like this, right? So transforming the way we work being the main mission, right? So, I mean, I can't say enough, and I'm just going to kind of build this quickly, and you'll see a lot of things, like the building strategic capabilities, winning raving fans, right? These are all things that, you know, as we get deeper into the presentation, Tableau is the type of company that can be a catalyst for these things, right? So I think this slide, while it's, you know, particularly relevant in a broader sense internally, I think it's really like resonant in a conference like this.
So what is revenue management? So as we engaged with our new stakeholders, we had to describe it. We had to basically whittle down our charter into a couple words. And basically what we're known for is being the pricing guys. So revenue management is relatively a new department in the CPG field. Our department in particular has only been around for probably 4 years. It originated in one of the divisions. So when IGS was formed, we had to, you know, scale it out across and have more work. But the importance of this slide is to really show that, you know, we're responsible for pricing insights, mix optimization for products globally. So you saw a couple slides ago the products that we have under our umbrella. So we need analytics. It's foundational to what we do. And with that need, we became the de facto leaders of analytics at the Campbell Soup company. So a little bit of how we're organized too is you saw that we had divisions. We have category leads, so business managers that engage with the business. And then we also have like an analytical hub that's responsible for meeting demand, innovating. So John and I were both part of the analytic hub. So with the extra demand of work with consolidating IGS and now responsible for 2 new divisions of work, we knew that we had to scale our people with process and technology. We were fortunate enough early on to have a really good leader. In particular, our manager, John and I's manager, was a peer to the CIO. So we had a lot of political backing and a lot of the work that we wanted to do. With the IGS mindset in mind, everything that we did, we wanted to create scalable for the rest of the departments within IGS. We started off with the typical analytic maturity curve. You know, in the beginning, we were pretty much just only descriptive analytics. And we thought that as we progressed on this journey, you know, as we climbed each capability, we'd realize benefits increasing in terms of deeper insights, higher productivity for ourselves, and that we thought would ultimately lead to an analytic culture.
So, you know, we'll mention partnership a lot, right? So from my perspective and where we sit in the organization, this is a simplified version, I would say, of like core services that BI would provide at Campbell's. Highlighting obviously the bottom right, because without a strong partner in terms of driving demand for this type of new way of thinking and new way of doing things with data, there's really no reason to do it, right? So for us, like, we feel like we're pretty prepared in terms of research and other things that we do, and very well developed, I think, in the other 3 areas in the traditional sense. But we really haven't had that, like, sort of trigger to move us forward, right, in terms of serving the organization a little bit better. So, you know, what Pete and John and their team had done was brought that partner to the table, right, with us. And not only to push advanced analytics, but also to kind of evolve those other 3 service areas in a new way, right, that's going to support that more effectively. So really for us, this is, you know, in transforming the business, we're transforming, you know, how we support them, right? So that's sort of what was important for us. And, you know, Pete talked about that sort of roadmap, right? So what was born out of this partnership was a roadmap that we sort of embarked on together, right? So what you see at the bottom of this, and this is pretty popular, I'm sure some people have seen this before, but We were doing pretty well at the bottom in terms of delivering with traditional methods and traditional tools. But really what Tableau, was providing us was a way to propel us further up the ladder, right? And there was a lot of things that these guys felt Tableau could do, and we quickly saw that too. And I think it's really driving a new type of analysis and a new type of person in our organization to make things better, right?
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about so we mentioned this people process technology idea at the start. So we'll talk a little bit about how some of those things were put into action in terms of how we evolved as a group within the Campbell Soup company. So Paul just showed the technology that was up on the screen before, so that's the types of tools that we were looking to implement as we moved along the journey. So this is a very simple example of how we started putting those tools into practice. So we'll get into a little more detail around some of this later on when we show a little more fleshed out example. But at its core, there's a lot of repetitive work that goes on in some of the things that we do. So we're delivering a lot of the same types of analyses, but it's for a different business partner, it's for a different product category, or it's that time of year again when we deliver that piece of work again. So what we were really trying to do is utilize the new technology that we had to try and strip out some of the non-value added work. And with Tableau, and then also with Alteryx, you've probably seen around the conference as well, those are really the two main components that we did. So this example right here is basically we took sales data and financial data and kind of combined them into one. We did the blending to bring them together. One of the benefits of these tools is you can add other data sources like just publicly available online data. So you can put some process and some standardization around it. So you take out that work, and then Pete mentioned our service leads. All they have to do is they don't have to pull data anymore. They can just go to the sources that we create and get to finding insights as opposed to spending time pulling data, which is what we're trying to avoid as much as we can. Okay, so people. This was, we have this new technology in our toolkit now. So, but we needed the right people to be able to take advantage of it. So that manifested itself in a couple different ways. So we had to kind of train up the people that we had currently in the organization, and Pete will talk about that a little bit later. But there was also a pivot in the way in the types of skills that we recruited externally for, and then also how we deployed our organization, even just within our revenue management. In our little revenue management group. So Pete mentioned this hub. So we have this idea of a hub. And the basic idea is this kind of one or few to many in terms of support. So that was this basic idea, which one of the underlying principles is you don't need everyone to have the same set of skills. You just assess the type of skills that you need and make sure that they're covered across the people that you have in the group. So we'll just show a quick example of this. One of the first steps when you're doing any analysis is the data prep stage. So maybe you have a few people with Alteryx designer licenses that are there to set up those repetitive tasks, set up as much automation as they can, strip out, again, a lot of the non-value added. So you have a few of those people. And then what they do is they support a larger group of people that maybe have Tableau Desktop. So these are the people that are charged with insight discovery, insight generation. They're pretty close to the business, understand what our business partners are needing. And then what they do is they're able to support a larger group of insights consumers that are really just looking for the information when they need it. They may not have the skills or the desire to be digging in data to find their insights, but they know they have questions that they need answered. So we started approaching things this way, and we thought it was a good unlock to providing some more value to the organization and really living into these principles that we had now being part of the IGS organization. So we have a big old toy box full of amazing tools that we never had before. We've got an amazing crew of people all being deployed in the right ways. Unfortunately, that really still isn't enough. We really didn't get the unlock until we started to put a little process and structure around the entire organization. So this was really the unlock for us. So we go back to, we mentioned some of the things up front, our goals that we had. So it was get faster, right? So strip out redundant time, hopefully get better, so kind of deliver the same work faster and hopefully better, but then we also wanted to push into these more advanced spaces. So with that in mind, so that's what we were trying to do. I'll do the audience participation part. Easy question, PowerPoint, everyone have PowerPoint, right? We do too. Now, maybe there's some differences in how we use it, but for us, we are a very PowerPoint-heavy organization. It's just the way that we work. So it would be nice to be able to share things live, interactive in Tableau, but the realities that we have are that we operate in PowerPoint. So that provides a couple of issues that we would have to resolve. One, takes a lot of time. So that right away goes in contrast to the get faster component of it. Second, we want to standardize and show up consistently across these new business partners that we have. So just everyone starting from square one in PowerPoint, that just provides challenges, makes it difficult. We made a lot of progress, but when you think about 3 business units across multiple countries, dozens of product categories, it's still a challenge. So we needed to do a little bit more in terms of putting some process around it. So that kind of started the work. And we had 2 real main goals in terms of the process work. One was to document the knowledge that we would be providing to our business partners. And then the second was to automate the process and standardize the process and make sure that we show up the same way. So as we talk about the knowledge part of the process, so there was a lot of work to understand the types of work that we tend to provide to our business partners. Go through the old decks, get a sense of what are the types of charts and visualizations that we would show. And then the next step was to kind of start to categorize them, and you can start to bucket them into different topics that we would always be answering. So we didn't just show, let's just say, macroeconomic pricing trends. There was a broader price and sales trends bucket, as an example, right? So you start to categorize these things, and you get a sense for kind of the underlying reasons why you're doing all of this stuff. So in the next step, so again, I mentioned I'm kind of a researcher at heart, and I think a lot of us here probably are. So we applied a market research briefing framework to all of the work that we did. So it was a good validation to make sure that what we were providing was actually the right information, and that it had a purpose, and there was a reason why we were doing it. And it was also, we used a very, to us it was a common framework, but it's already validated, so we didn't have to come up with any new ideas. We were able to leverage some existing work. So that was the first step. The next piece was developing the infrastructure. So as part of rolling around in all of the information that we were providing, you get really close. You get pretty intimate with the things that you're doing. And that's when you can start to see the connections and the commonalities between the types of work that you're doing. And that's where you can find a lot of the optimization opportunities. So as someone who is very intimately involved in doing this, you start to see, oh, well, I have this type of data which feeds this, and maybe I start off to do the next visualization, which is a different type, but then you realize, well, actually this one can, it actually makes it a little bit better. So you go through that process, and it's highly iterative. It takes a fair amount of time, and it requires some focus. But at the end of the day, what you end up with is an infrastructure which isn't overwhelming, but meets the needs of everything pretty much that you're trying to do. So then once you have that piece in place, then you can move to kind of creating this final deliverable. So for us, we lived in this PowerPoint culture. We knew that more often than nary a piece of information tends to be shared that's not on the deck. So we needed to be able to get to that deck faster while still using all of the power that Tableau could provide in terms of being able to dig deeper and find better insights. So at the end of the day, what we ended up with was we designed Tableau with PowerPoint lookalike dashboards. And this is going to sound crazy, but the value that we got out of this was both structure and flexibility. So it seems like there's some opposition there, but we had the structure of being able to set everything up, so all the visualizations look the same, no matter whether you're talking about Canadian crackers or United States juice. Everything looked the same, but everything was designed with the ability to let the user play around, find the exact visualization that they needed, and then be able to get it into that final output faster. So it was, like I said, it was a process that took time, but I think at the end we had a lot of value that we were able to extract from approaching this particular problem this way.
Yeah. Okay, so then what, right? So, we start to form new partnerships, right? So external partnerships. So this is a framework for sort of analytics as a service that we rolled around with a partner called Mu Sigma. And the reason I started in the middle is usually you build these slides right from the bottom up or the top down, but we sort of did this on purpose because we've been focusing, right? So if we're talking about Tableau and visualizations and that sort of delivery, we're focusing on this data science layer in the middle, right? But what you quickly realize, and I don't think this is any surprise to anybody, is that there's an interplay between that and how you engineer your data, right? So as I said before, we've done a pretty good job doing traditional methods of data management, but that's not really going to accomplish everything we want in the future, right? Whether it be different types of data, whether it be experiments versus operational, right, types of use cases, we've really taken a fresh look at, where our data engineering needs to be in the future, right? And then really the utopia is how do we solve problems in a consistent way, right? So this isn't just about, engineering your data and delivering your data. It's like, how do you get that mindset of delivering insights in a consistent way, right? So this is where we started to pivot to, thinking completely differently about this. Then, like, more immediately, what's next, right, is we start to roll around in how do we push some of these things forward a little bit more quickly, right? So one way to do that is shorter experimental sprint projects, right? So just trying things out and working together a little bit more closely, right? Like whether it be BI and these guys or these guys and their business partners, right? It's just trying things out, doing things that are going to drive out like more specifics about where we want to go, right? And then also, this second bullet I think is really important. So especially as a technology professional, like it's looking at people a little bit differently than you're used to, right? So if you can't already tell from what Pete and John are talking about, in a lot of senses for any IT people in the room, you're dealing with a different, more advanced, consumer of data, right, than I think what we're typically used to. And it's not treating every single customer of ours the same way, right? So whereas before you may lock things down, and obviously there's an importance to data security in different instances, but giving more direct access to information in different ways and really evaluating, how we deal with people on a case-by-case basis, I think is really important. And then, like I said about the information backbone, I've referred to some of these things already, making data more accessible, being prepared for the demand, right? So, as I said before, we're still developing a lot of this demand for different types of data and different data sources, but we want to be prepared for that, right? So we're already exploring different technologies and different ways of approaching this to be prepared for that. And then obviously, whenever you're dealing with a group that's doing a lot more computation, a lot more algorithms, a lot more of that deep data analysis, right? The old compute and storage mechanisms aren't going to work, right? So again, this is just demand that drives this joint roadmap and the way that we look at our technology in the future. But now we have a real reason, right? So I'll turn it back over to Pete.
Thanks. So you heard about revenue management. Part of our journey was internal and driving our analytical skill set. But we were also challenged by our manager to spread the analytical culture. Now, this wasn't in our job description, and it took a lot of work. But the following are tactics that we used to try to do this. The first being the Tableau Drive methodology. Just a show of hands, has anyone used the Tableau Drive methodology? So, one? Awesome. Well, it's free white paper, available on the Tableau website. When we first embarked on Tableau, it gives you advice. It's like a playbook of how to roll out your first application, how to get momentum, how to really sell the value to your stakeholders. It maps out who the stakeholders are, and it kind of tells you how you should work with them when. But it also talks about the phasing. So the discovery phase, you just get Tableau, you start learning it, then you just try to apply it to a business problem. So you create a prototype. Then with that prototype, you get some feedback from either your manager or your stakeholders, and you improve upon that. And once you're satisfied with that, you scale it out to the rest of the organization. So one of the things that we saw was this was true, this phasing methodology was true for each business problem that we solved. But it was also true for each department that we reached out to. They had their own internal phasing process, their own internal drive process. And some groups weren't successful. Others were. And in the beginning, we were responsible for creating the prototypes for other departments. And that did not work out well. Halfway through our Tableau journey, we knew that we did not have a best-in-class server environment or a setup or interaction with our stakeholders. So we were engaged with Slalom. They're a BI consulting partner, a partner of Tableau, and they have a package called the Navigator. And what this does is, well, what we used it for, is we used it to give us another playbook to optimize our server environment. But not only that, they also looked at all of our stakeholders. They interviewed all of the people that were analytical practitioners that would interact with Tableau or were already interacting with Tableau, and kind of gave us unbiased feedback on them. And this was really important because they told us groups that we should pretty much just stop working with, and other groups to work harder with. And being that this isn't our main job, that was important from a time-saving standpoint. So driving Tableau adoption was not easy, and we tried a lot of things. One of the things that actually worked was something called a TPEP. So we were fortunate enough to have a really engaging sales rep. Is Peter Hall here?
I see him. He's in the corner.
He's in the corner.
Hiding.
Yeah. Well, you'll start hearing his name more and more because it becomes more and more relevant. So we used him a lot. So what a TPEP is it's a month subscription, or I don't know if it's a month, but it's an extended subscription for both desktop and server. And so what we did is we coupled this with advanced training that we purchased. So an advanced training is like a 3-day intensive training where you're there all day and you basically go from beginner to really advanced LOD calculations and parameters and stuff like that. So the revenue management group paid for it, right? We wanted to increase our capability. But what we did is we invited other departments in there. So we selected certain power users that we thought would evangelize in other departments. So that was really helpful because now we trained them, and now we have this month free of these toys that you get to go play with. So we challenged them. We said, hey, you have this now, go apply it to your business, and come back in a month and share out what you did. So we reserved our social media room. It has a wall screen, not quite as big as that, but close. And so we threw the visualizations up there and basically started interacting with them, started asking questions. And our wonderful Tableau rep sent us some killer swag to reward people for their participation. And with that, that was basically the first instance of our user group. And what we realized is we started this user group. We had, I think, 5 or 6 sessions, and a lot of it was just John and I up there, showing revenue management dashboards. We weren't really getting good traction. And when we went to the Tableau conference, we saw all these other really passionate user groups, and we were like, well, we want that. What are we doing wrong? So we asked Peter Hall what we were doing wrong. And he said, well, why don't I do it? And we were like, great. So now he runs the user groups with his buddy John. And so that's been really successful. That they have relevant content for people that are at all different levels. And at Campbell's, we have people that are experts, certified, and then we have people that are just curious. And then moving on to revenue management internally, like our manager at the time made a very public statement of Tableau has to be a core capability of revenue management. So we all had to be accredited in it. And I don't think any other group really has like a tool application that they had to be accredited for in Campbell Soup. So this was a pretty strong move forward, a commitment. And all of this momentum went to something that we called a community of practice. So this is kind of where we are now. So a community of practice is a group of people that get together with similar interests to learn or socialize, network. But in our case, we also wanted to raise the capability of the organization. So our mission, and our name is the Campbell Analytics Society. It's a community of practice. We call it CAS, so if I start referring to CAS now, that's what it is. And our mission was really to learn from each other cross-functionally, really to develop our skill set, but also innovate and think of new ways that we could drive value for our business. So we created this selfishly, but we wanted to add value.
And this is a pretty new concept for us. I mean, this is the inaugural community of practice at the Campbell Soup Company. There's kind of designs on more of these, but I know from myself, there's a couple people that work at Campbell's in the room that are a part of it. It's been a really rewarding thing to be a part of. Again, we don't have many of these groups where people with interests around the types of work they like to do or just things that they're interested in have an opportunity to get together. So, Pete said we put a lot of time into, because everything you see here was us in, 20 hours maybe of design sessions saying, we knew that we wanted an analytics community of practice. Well, what does that mean? Analytics is a very big, broad topic, which by itself maybe doesn't mean a whole lot, but we took the time to get pretty focused to say we're going to have pillars that each event that we're going to put forward or we're going to talk about should be aligned to one of these pillars. And so that's why. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what are the right pillars. So visualization is one, right? And that's Tableau is obviously a big component of that. Pete will talk about what we did with that in a little bit. But we laid these things out to give ourselves a little bit of focus to make sure that anything we do is going to help in terms of this kind of raising the analytics culture. So I think it's been a pretty successful implementation so far. I think we have 100. I think we have 100 members on our internal Facebook group, workplace group, and I think we're getting a lot of positive feedback. So it's I think this is again pretty new, but I think it's been pretty successful so far.
So how did we launch our first event? Well, we had a Tableau VizWiz competition. John partook in it. He didn't win, but
in my heart I did.
Did Anthony win?
Actually, our winner is right there in the front row there. So what we had is we marketed this internally. We had a data set of Philadelphia spend data. So Campbell Soup Company is headquartered in Camden, so close to Philadelphia, so it resonates with a lot of the people. And what we did is we gave a month for people to develop an application and share it out. They had 5 minutes. And we had 3 judges. And you can, you can kind of see in the back, you have our sales rep, Peter Hall, as one of the judges. You had our executive, Beth Mara Kessler, who is the head of IGS, who reports straight to the CEO, as one of the judges. And then you had another director of finance in there. This was very well attended. It had 70 plus people. We had a happy hour afterwards. And this has kind of transformed our way of thinking about analytics in our company. Because this was the first time I feel that people looked at analytics and were like, wow, you can actually have fun with it. Now, we're all here having fun with analytics, but at the Campbell Soup Company, analytics isn't the fun thing to do. It doesn't have that cultural, passion. So this was the first, win that we had. So we were very proud of this, and we will continue to do events like this. So what's next? We'll continue having Tableau as long as they're willing to come on and run our user groups. We had launched another TPEP for individuals that were interested from other departments. And we continually want to optimize and onboard new departments to our Tableau server environment because we've built this asset and we want to leverage it across other groups. So now our lessons learned. So what worked? What was key to a lot of this was the support that we had from our manager. Our manager at the time was an executive. We had a cost center, we had money, we could spend it. We spent it effectively, but he was very willing to invest in our learning and development, and that was very key. And inviting other departments into that advanced training and coupling it with that TPEP to kind of unleash them, that was really effective too. Not having, so the new approaches, so the Campbell Analytics Society was a new approach. Prior, you heard me talking about the Tableau user community and how John and I would get up there and just kind of spit out the slides that we were doing. That wasn't really working. So we kind of reframed our thinking and figured out how to get people engaged in different ways. And that was the BizWiz competition in that society. And our partnerships. Slalom leapfrogged us forward in terms of capability. They allowed us to anticipate problems that we weren't expecting. They set up a roadmap for a Tableau optimization. So that navigator package was really great. And then our partnership with Tableau was even better. Oh, sorry, not even better. Just as great. But I would say don't be afraid to use your sales rep. Don't be afraid to leverage them. They've done this before. They've helped out other companies. We were just fortunate to have an engaging sales rep that kind of helped us push it forward. And finally, what we heard from a bunch of vendors, so on our analytical roadmap, was our unique partnership with BI. So we rolled up our sleeves together. We created this analytical roadmap together, and we were very transparent with each other, very blunt, cards on the table, created the same end goal, and we had good success with that.
Then opportunities. So really, we're continuing to learn, as we ramp up and grow in terms of the licensing structure, right? Like perpetual subscription, core-based, named user. I think it's just something we're going to have to take a look at, like really closely as we're in this sort of, growth period with Tableau. And quite frankly, there's other, as we sort of evolve some of our technology strategies internally, that also influences what we do with a lot of our vendors. So, we're going to continue to look at that. The pace of change, right? I mean, I think Pete and John would probably be 5 years ahead right now if it were up to them. And, there's a lot of things around, they mentioned culture and different things in terms of like how fast we went and how quickly. So I think the idea of just trying different things and figuring out what works, right, in terms of pace of change. I mean, different people change at different rates, right? And that's something to be cognizant of. And then institutional support. So, Pete and John have mentioned multiple times. We did, they in particular had a really strong leader with an analytical vision. But I think one thing, and we're hoping that this will happen at some point at Campbell's, is that without really, it says institutional, I think, but it's really organizational around an analytics COE, right? We really think that's something that's important, right? We discussed that with some of our partners. It's a consistent message that we get. So even though, we get really good support in different instances, we really feel like that's an important step for us to take, right? To really make this meaningful moving forward. And really just to, like it says, to break the inertia, right? A lot of this is unlearning, right? Some things and learning new things, right? And I think that's really what this partnership is about. That's a lot of what this message is about. So that's really, I think, our opportunities for the future. Johnny?
Yeah, so we did a little bit of distilling. We will distill one more level. If we were to say that there were 3 things that we thought you should leave here with, based on everything that we've just talked about. Again, the partnership with our business intelligence department was pretty crucial to making as much progress as we have. So Pete mentions our partners, Mike, our slalom guy over there. When we talked to them, we showed Mu Sigma. They were pretty surprised, to say the least, at how constructive the relationship was between the business, our revenue management group, and BI. They were expecting, and they had seen a lot in their past, a much more combative relationship. So I mean, to us, I mean, there's no other way to do it because, I mean, it helps break down so many barriers if you're working together and you're creating things like a joint roadmap and everyone has a stake in what you're doing. So we think that's one of the really important things to keep in mind is, you know, we love our BI team and BI can be your friend and really help you advance your agenda along. The next part is, so I talked about this a little bit before, but identifying the right people. So that broke across a couple of different spaces. So we talked about our leader, so that's one. He was, you know, Paul mentioned he had a vision that he wanted to implement, and he was instrumental in helping us break down as many of the political barriers as he could in order to help us do the things that we were all aligned that we wanted to do. So there was that. There's also the team, right? The team that's leading the change. So we'll give ourselves, Paul said we were awesome, so I'll say it too.
You can.
We'll give ourselves a little shout out, right? I mean, but it was a forward-thinking team that was ready to accept new ways of doing things. And sometimes you'll find in companies that's a little bit harder. So you kind of find the right people to help lead the change, ones that are going to be living into it every day and can really be the change champions. And then it's also targeting the right people to be changed. So we may have wasted some of our training resources on groups that weren't as willing to come along with us for the ride. So it's important to make sure that, you know, as much as you can, and that was a lot of the work that Slalom helped us with, was make sure you find the right people, the people that are going to be accepting of the vision that you think is the right way to go. And then lastly, it's the right places to make an impact. So we showed that little example up there before in terms of trying to bring together this data we were using pretty frequently. It wasn't a huge deal objectively. I mean, it's no groundbreaking thing to do, but what it does is it lets you get points on the board, and it lets the people that have been supporting you from the start to feel a little bit better about that support because they can see things starting to happen. So, you know, I think we mentioned sprint projects earlier on. You try to break these things down into smaller chunks that are a little easier to achieve, and then you start to gain some momentum. The flywheel starts turning, and then it becomes just a lot easier to do, you know, to keep pushing up on that continuum, depending on your perspective, right, into the predictive and the prescriptive space, which is where I think everyone is really trying to go in order to impact the business results. And then, yeah, this whole thing started because of, you know, Tableau was the first step in really evangelizing all of us. And I mean, I joined the revenue management group, it was about 1.5 years ago, had never used Tableau before. And mine eyes were opened after seeing the power that it had. And so, you know, it started evangelizing other people in the organization. And then again, it evolved from kind of single users just playing around to having, you know, a pretty significant user base in a couple of countries. So we wouldn't be where we are without Tableau.
That's all we had. So please.
5 stars. 5 stars. I know we don't have to ask. And then we'll be sticking around for any questions, or we can, yeah.
So was the question, how long did we take to plan before we executed? For the analytic journey, for the RevMan journey. So we started with, we broke it up into 2 phases, pretty much based on budget years. So we started, the first phase was just Tableau and Tableau Server on top of our existing data layers. And then that was about, I want to say 3 months that we had. And then we waited 6 months after we implemented it and really embarked on the rest of the analytics from the data engineering and the prescriptive analytics. And that we took about another 2 months, and that was intensive work sessions with our group that we had a bunch of vendors come in, we analyzed them, we, you know, yayed or nayed, you know, if that contributed to our goal. So it was in 2 chunks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. So the question was, did we get any ROI based off of these initiatives? And the answer is yes. So revenue management, any one change in the pricing tactic. So internally, we had a lot of value. We're not really allowed to quantify that, but in terms of productivity, the benefit that we saw with that is we stripped out a lot of redundancy that allowed us to improve and get to higher capabilities, that got to deeper insights, that could unlock more revenue management opportunities.
Right, and I mean, we talked about, I view what we do as research, and I think it's generally, I faced this when I was in kind of a more traditional market research role. I think it's sometimes hard to put, I think everyone wants to put an ROI on research that you do, but it's sometimes hard to put like a very specific dollar value on some of these things. So, I mean, I think, like to Pete's point, I mean, there's a lot of productivity gains, which is back to our kind of IGS mandates, and then we believe that we're delivering better insights to our business partners now that are even more and better data driven than they were initially when we were in the Excel landscape. So I think it's hard to put a number on it, but I mean we firmly believe, and I think we have some buy-in from the rest of the organization, that what we're doing is an endeavor that's worth devoting time and resources to.
And just to add on that, I mean, I think a majority of earning calls are departments referenced as, a proactive or a productive, value add to the business. So we can't quantify it in a specific amount because we're not allowed to, but it's, public in that manner.
Yes.
How much of your user group is local versus remote? Do you have like people Skyping in, calling in, or
So the question was, how much of our user group is remote versus, on-site type thing? The question, that's a good question, and we have not done a good job of the remote interaction yet. So primarily that analytic user, the CAS group, is all world headquarter based. Now we've tried to like Skype in and bring in the external, part of the company. And revenue management, we have like little interaction with them coming on, but that's something we're struggling with. And I think it's, we'll figure it out, but it's really difficult to have that conversation over the web, like show off stuff. You don't know if they can't hear you, so we're working through that. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure, so the question was, talk more about the Analytics Society and other events that we have coming up. So we just had an event, was it a month ago? Or 3 weeks ago on machine learning. And it was basically just to give like an overview of machine learning. So, that's one. We break them up into basically some sharing, but also work sharing. So now we've engaged with a VP. So we have a core group of members that are responsible for each one of the pillars, and it's kind of like a planning committee. So now that planning committee is embarking on like side projects. We call them like gigs for strategic parts of our business. And what we're going to do, and we just started this, so we're going to do the work and share out as we go on. So we can get value add, we can make ourselves look really good, but also share out to the wider audience of people that are just kind of passively interested, so they can kind of gain value and figure out how to apply that to themselves. Some of the other events that we were thinking of were guest speakers coming on site. I know I think we had like consultants of, so we haven't done this yet, but we're going to have our partners come in and give talks.
Yeah, I mean, so this whole idea of the community of practice was something that was given to us by, there was a consultant that was working with our HR department, and they kind of targeted analytics, reached out to Pete and myself, and we pretty much took it from there. We recruited some additional members for our core team, and then we started running it. So they gave us some ideas about things we could do, the cadence with which you should be engaging with people. So Pete mentioned these kind of group share outs where we just pick a topic, and there's a little bit of preparation that gets done, or someone with some expertise or some experience in the topic will kind of lead the talk, but it's meant to be very informal, and it's really, its purpose is to maybe explain it. So machine learning is an example, a topic that may seem unapproachable to people that, you know, hey, I'm interested in analytics, I haven't really done it before, but maybe I'd like to, but it gives them, you know, an accessible way in. So, you know, sometimes we just send out an article, right? So data mining was one of the pillars. So we sent out, there was, you know, a tidy data article, you know, from, you know, I have a little bit of R knowledge, so we sent that out just as a way to kind of engage with the group to say, hey, here's some things that you could be thinking about that is going to help kind of push along your analytics maturity. So it's little things like that. Like Pete said, we have some more grandiose ideas for speakers that we'd like to have come in and address the group. And then there's kind of the big events like the VizWiz or other things that might be similar where you could see a larger audience. You know, so these share outs are 10, 15, 20 people. You know, we had 70 packed into the room that we had for the VizWiz competition. So, you know, those are generally the types of things that we do. So some mix of more informal engagements, some just kind of push information out to the members, and then things where we're bringing in a large amount of people.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so the question is, have we experienced any difficulties as we've started to work across multiple departments? So we were pretty fortunate in that, so our group was one where revenue management was happening in the places where it is still kind of happening now. So informally, there was a little more connectivity there than there may have been if you were, you know, a situation where no one was talking to each other, and now we're, you know, bringing together disparate processes and people and, you know, business models. So it wasn't that difficult. The hardest thing, which is sometimes the easiest thing, is just trying to get everyone kind of beating to the same drum, which again, everyone's got business pressure and requests from their business partners to get things done now. So it can sometimes be hard to be able to devote the time to doing some of the things that we laid out here. And that was, so my whole role was systems and process. So we actually had a person that was designed to constructing a process that would work across all of the divisions, one that would again provide structure while at the same point in time giving flexibility for the users that are going to have, you know, different businesses and different categories that segment different ways to still be able to deliver insights in a cohesive revenue management way. So from that standpoint, since no one really had to do anything and all they got was some benefit out of it, we didn't really have, you know, there wasn't really any pushback. Again, it took some work to make sure that everything we would have would meet the needs, but again, that was kind of my job, was to make sure that everyone was going to have something that they could actually end up using, and we didn't just spend all this time in this effort to put something on the shelf and just have it never be touched.
Yeah, and like, and another micro example, I mean, you know, I kind of alluded to it earlier with technology, like, you know, it makes people uncomfortable, right? Like when you're saying things like, you know, say like something as simple as direct access to a database using a query tool that, you know, typically you're throwing an application layer on top of that, and it drives a lot of questions, right? For me, it's more like, start with, why do we do that thing, right? Why is it this way? And what is it about this that makes it different? Like, you really have to almost unlearn people that way, like by like prodding with questions. And that, I mean, that's one example, but I can say there's probably been multiple examples of that, right? Where you just try to plow through some of the uncertainty and trepidation with questions. Honestly, what would be the reason to not do it this way, right? So
from the user engagement in our user groups, we talk about the tools, right? So there was at times where we had pushback with our legacy systems, and I think when just having the conversation and coming up with, you know, both tools can be used. This is maybe the best way to use them, and just having an open discussion. That really broke down some like tension, but it did exist at the start. But I think now I wouldn't say there's any tension. We're pretty open with the two tools and you know, what position they play in the company.
Good. All right.
Anyone else?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks
everybody.
for coming.
Yep,
Appreciate
thanks.
it.